It's a bitter winter morning in 1070 AD, north of England. Smoke rises from a small village nestled in the Yorkshire Vales, the scene of yet another murderous visit by the men of William the Conqueror, the King of England. Men, women, children, livestock lie butchered on the frozen ground. Their blood, unable to seep into the frozen soil, pools thickly around them. William I's bloody rampage across the north of England has come to be known as the Harrying of the North, an attempt by the king to break the resistance that still clung on desperately. William had been king just a few years after successfully defeating Harold II at the Battle of Hastings in 1066, and while most of England had been brought to heel, the north remained stubborn, refusing to meet William in large-scale conflict that they were sure to lose, and showing a level of disdain towards William that the fiery Norman would not tolerate. As a result, William instigated a mass subjugation of the north that was borderline genocidal to our modern interpretation of the word. Instead of retaining a large singular army, William I divided his troops into smaller units and then spread throughout the north, butchering, burning, and raping as they went. Figures are still keenly debated by historians to this day. Perhaps as many as 150,000 died from starvation as crops were targeted across the region, with tens of thousands more likely slaughtered as the king choked the life out of the rebellious north. The Norman conquest of England in 1066 completely reshaped the country's social, political, and cultural landscape. Led by William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, the conquest began with the decisive Battle of Hastings, where William's forces defeated King Harold II. This victory was a personal triumph for William and a turning point that heralded the beginning of Norman rule in England. However, winning the battle was just the first step. The real challenge lay in consolidating his power across a vast, diverse, and very hostile country. In the immediate aftermath of the Battle of Hastings, William faced sporadic resistance from various quarters of the kingdom. Several English nobles who had survived the battle continued to defy Norman authority, and there were pockets of resistance in different regions. To address this, William adopted a multifaceted strategy to secure his rule. He began by building a series of castles, such as the Tower of London, to serve as strongholds and symbols of Norman power. These fortifications were crucial in projecting military might and providing a base from which to quell uprisings. William also sought to secure loyalty through a combination of rewards and punishments. He granted lands to his Norman followers, creating a new feudal aristocracy loyal to him, and attempted to pay off the lurking Danes to the north. Simultaneously, he was ruthless in dealing with any dissent. Rebellions were met with swift and brutal reprisals, as seen in his actions in the southwest, Wales, and the north. This combination of military strength, strategic fortifications, and a loyal aristocracy helped William consolidate his power, although complete control was still a work in progress. Despite William's efforts to establish control, the north of England remained a hotbed of resistance. A combination of local dissatisfaction with Norman rule and support from external forces fueled the northern rebellions. Key figures in these uprisings included Edgar Atheling, the last male member of the Royal House of Wessex who had a legitimate claim to the English throne. Edgar found support among the loyal Anglo-Saxon nobility and sought alliances with the Danes who had historical interests in England. In 1068, Edgar and other dissatisfied nobles led a rebellion that quickly gained momentum. They were joined by Danish forces who saw an opportunity to reclaim their influence in England. The rebels managed to capture the city of York, a significant strategic and symbolic victory. The threat posed by the northern rebellions was considerable. If left unchecked, these uprisings could inspire further resistance across the country and potentially undo William's conquests. The capture of York, in particular, was a significant blow to Norman prestige and control. Recognizing the gravity of this situation, William launched a series of punitive campaigns to suppress the rebellion. Initially, William's responses to the rebellions were relatively measured. He attempted to reassert control through military presence and fortification. A treasure trove of money was given to the Danes to leave and return to Denmark, which they took, and then remained in the north of England. These efforts by William proved insufficient as the northern rebels continued to resist, often aided by harsh terrain and local support. The persistence of the rebellions and their threat to his authority eventually drove William to adopt a more ruthless approach, culminating in the harrying of the north. This scorched earth campaign, which involved widespread destruction and atrocities, was designed to break the spirit of the rebels and render the region uninhabitable. Villages were burned, crops destroyed, and thousands of people were killed, or displaced. The harrying of the North wasn't just a military campaign, but a calculated act of terror meant to crush any remaining resistance and ensure long-term Norman control over England. This period marked one of the darkest chapters in English history, characterized by widespread destruction, massacres, and famine. The campaign began in the winter of 1069 as William gathered his forces and marched north. His march was a calculated display of power designed to reassert his authority over the most rebellious parts of his new kingdom. The journey itself was fraught with challenges, including difficult terrain, harsh winter conditions, and plenty of people who would happily have cut his throat if they had the chance. Many believed it best to wait out the winter in the south before returning in the spring. However, William's determination to suppress the uprisings was unwavering. By marching through the heart of the rebellious territories and leaving a trail of destruction, he intended to break the insurgents' will and deter any future revolts. Upon reaching York, William swiftly dealt with the immediate threat posed by the rebels. Sources are mixed over how it happened, but apparently William and his troops were able to easily gain access to the city, perhaps after being passed a set of keys to the front door. I mean, who knew it could be that easy? The capture of the city involved brutal hand-to-hand fighting, and the Normans showed no mercy in their efforts to reclaim it. After securing York, William turned his attention to the surrounding regions, where resistance was still strong, while ordering the construction of 2 new castles to strengthen the Norman presence. In December 1069, with the bleak northern winter setting in, William launched his campaign, which moved well beyond traditional military engagements and aimed to destroy the economic and social fabric of the rebellious regions. By early 1070, villages, crops, infrastructure had been systematically destroyed. By spring, large swaths of northern England were left desolate and virtually empty. The rebellion had been crushed. The methods employed during the harrying of the North were ruthless and aimed at rendering the region uninhabitable. William's forces implemented a scorched earth policy, systematically destroying anything that could sustain the local population or be used by the rebels. Widespread arson not only destroyed property, but also created a psychological impact, instilling fear and hopelessness among the survivors. The impact of the harrying on the population of northern England was catastrophic. Contemporary chroniclers like Orderic Vitalis and the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles describe harrowing scenes of starvation, with people resorting to eating anything they could find, including horses, dogs, even human corpses. Thousands were forced to flee their homes in search of safety. Many sought refuge in the south, while others perished in the bleak wilderness. One of the most significant short-term consequences was dramatic depopulation. William's scorched earth tactics led to the death of thousands of inhabitants, either directly through violence or indirectly through starvation and exposure. Economic collapse was not just a temporary setback, it shattered the regional economy. Markets ceased to function, trade routes were disrupted, and the local economy ground to a halt. But William had succeeded, had consolidated his power. And in the aftermath, he established yet more strongholds and castles throughout the north, solidifying the Normans' military presence. The harrying of the north precipitated significant changes in land ownership across England. The dispossession of Anglo-Saxon nobility and the redistributing of their lands to Norman lords marked the beginning of a new aristocratic order. This shift in land ownership was not limited to the north, but was a part of William's broader strategy to consolidate his rule across the entire country. The introduction of Norman aristocracy had far-reaching implications. Norman lords brought new administrative practices, legal systems, and cultural influences. The feudal system was solidified, with the king at the apex and his vassals owing military service and allegiance in exchange for land. This hierarchical structure reshaped English society and governance. Culturally, the Norman aristocracy brought their language, customs, and agricultural styles with them, and over time, these influences merged with Anglo-Saxon traditions, leading to a unique Anglo-Norman culture. Politically, the harrying reinforced the centralization of power under the Norman monarchy. William's brutal suppression of rebellion established a precedent of dealing with dissent and reinforced the crown's authority. It took the north of England decades to recover from the carnage that was brought down on it, both economically and in terms of its population. In modern terms, we wouldn't hesitate to call this a genocide, but nearly 1,000 years ago, this was simply an act of war, a horrifying but necessary way to subjugate a rebellion.